Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, I am fired up for this episode today, baby, man. We're going college football playoff reaction. We all know what happened. Everybody's got an opinion on it. We're going to give you ours. I can't wait to dive in.
I think we're going to argue today. We don't argue much on the show, but I don't know how you feel, but I have a guess, and I think we're going to disagree.
Well, for those who are living under a rock, we got who's playing for the national championship in the college football playoff, at least who's in the bracket. Michigan, after stomping Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, gets the number 1 overall seed. Washington beats Oregon for the second time this year. They're number 2. Texas puts on a clinic against Oklahoma State, just shattering records in the Big 12 championship game. They get jumped up to number 3. And then Alabama beats Georgia for the first time, for their first loss in 3 seasons, and they get the number 4 spot over Florida State, who won the ACC championship game, was 13-0, but had a third-string quarterback, and Jordan Travis is out for the year with a broken leg. So everybody's got an opinion on this thing. I'm going to throw it to you. Let's start here. Did the committee get it right, or did they get it wrong?
They got it right. I don't even really understand the argument otherwise. Florida State deserved to make the college football playoff. The committee put the 4 most compelling teams, or the 4 best teams at this point, with the most compelling matchups into the college football playoff. What did you think this was? The hour-long show they do on ESPN is for nothing. And this is we were talking about it last week. It was, to me, I was more concerned that there was going to be 2 SEC teams in the playoffs. I was saying that I thought that Florida State was not going to be in even if they won, and I wasn't so sure that Texas was going to be in based on the way that the Alabama-Georgia game could have ended. And I don't think we were that far off from that. My main concern here, Brad, it sets a precedent going forward that's going to come into play much more now that we have a 12-team playoff going forward, because there's going to be group of 5. There's going to be liberties every year, and it's going to be, well, they're undefeated, but we've already left an undefeated team out, so now it's okay to do. And just really quickly, everybody's fired up right now and pissed off, and if you're in Florida, rightfully so. In a year and a half from now, the only people that are still going to care about this are Florida State fans. So as many people clutching their pearls, and I'm never watching college football again. Shut up. By December or by January 1st, you're going to be like, dang, man, this Florida State bowl game is actually going to be pretty good.
Well, I'm with you, man. The committee got it right. Let's be completely honest here. I don't know how anybody watching that Florida State game against Louisville could have sat back and legitimately said with a straight face that was going to be a good matchup between them and Michigan. And Michigan, I think we have some questions, and we'll preview this as we get going forward. But my God, Michigan would have stomped out Florida State. I don't care with the 3rd string or the 2nd string. It would not have been pretty. And yes, the defense was amazing. They played a perfect game, a Michelangelo type of painting, if you will, against Louisville and what that offense was putting up offensively. Jack Plummer turned into Jack Plummer. He turned into a pumpkin before our very eyes, just when we knew that Jack Plummer, there's no way he can go a full season looking this good offensively. He waited until the biggest moment of the season and completely laid an egg when the team needed him most. And that's what he does. So it wasn't shocking for anybody who's followed him and during his Big Ten and his Pac-12 career. But really, I know, what do we play the games for? If you're not going to award him for this, well, Tyson, I'm sorry. Did Florida State get screwed? We can have that conversation. But if we're talking about who the 4 best teams are as it's currently constructed on the field, Alabama is a better team than Florida State. Texas is a better team than Florida State. Michigan's a better team than Florida State. And Washington's a better team than Florida State. I don't know what the argument is here. And I know people are crying about it, and I don't see why.
Dude, I think, to be honest, if the committee was actually going to do the real rankings instead of some damage control, I don't know if Florida State slides in at 5. I think what they would have wanted to do was Georgia 5, Ohio State 6, and then you swap Bama and Texas and Florida State from the last college football ranking. And I honestly think if they would have had the balls to do that, people would be, I think, maybe a little bit more understanding about this, because now it feels like intentional slight versus, and this is what we were saying last week, and you kind of disagreed with me, but I was saying I felt the committee did themselves no favors, and they walked themselves into this position with the way that they ranked teams last week, because not dropping Florida State last week meant that you still thought they were the fourth best team in the country. And how does that necessarily change now that they win again? Like, if they get punished for winning again. And so, like, if you have an issue, take issue with last week's rankings, because everybody in the country knew when Jordan Travis got hurt, this was going to be a different Florida State team, and it changes the ceiling. I do take issue with the fact that the committee seems to be putting all of this blame on Jordan Travis. Like, this is just a kid who broke his leg. He's been playing fantastic, but he is getting scapegoated from this whole thing, which is wildly unfair.
Okay, let's move in. So the Florida State gets screwed. I think unequivocally you can say yes. I mean, this is the first Power 5 team that's gone undefeated and won their conference championship that's not going to be included in the college football playoff. The conference is bad. But so even then, though, I mean, that's one of the things that factored in here. But, like, my God, they got screwed. Like, I think even if both of us are saying, yes, the committee got it right, they're not one of the 4 best teams, that doesn't mean that they didn't get screwed. Like, not everything's black and white. Like, there's some gray. Both things can be true here. Florida State got screwed by the committee. It's never happened before, and they were the first team that literally got, that this happened to. But, Tyson, if we're being honest here, if we're completely being honest, Florida State didn't look that good during the regular season at times. Like,
Bama
yes, they went 13-0.
Let's be fair.
Skated by. They skated by.
Bama had a pull-away win from a G5 opponent. Bama didn't look good at different – I mean, if Auburn stops 4th and if you're pissed off, go take it up with the guys over at Auburn.
Yeah,
if they stop 4th and 31, you're in the playoffs. Yeah, they got screwed. It's unreal, and you feel for those kids, but you also, like, again, what in a television environment that ESPN gets to control, you didn't think that some of these, like, Florida State's got a bunch of money. They don't got Bama money. They don't got Texas money. They don't have Texas following. They don't have the Alabama following. That's part of the reason I think it's going to be really hard going forward for any of these teams to return to blue blood status, is because when it comes to we have to pick you or you to put on our national television network to make us more money, the only way I'm picking Nebraska is if it kicks at 4 and everybody who's a fan of Nebraska is eating dinner already. Like, this is – what did you think was going to happen? It sucks for Florida State. It really does. It stinks for a lot of those kids. It stinks for the fan base. This is better as a fan of the sport, just from a viewing perspective, and that's what they were going for. I quit saying if it was really about the 4 best teams. It's a combination of things. It always was. If you didn't see a one-loss SEC champion making it into the college football playoff, you haven't been paying attention for 15 years.
And the other thing too, Tyson, like you said, like, well, if it's about the 4 best teams, then Georgia should be in. Okay. Like, can we put a stop to that? Like, again, another team that was not that impressive throughout the regular season. Like, I get it. Yes, they went undefeated before the conference championship game. I mean, Missouri gave them all they asked for. Auburn, let's be honest, Auburn had a real shot at beating them. So I get where Kirby Smart's frustrated and, like, okay, this is our first loss in 3 seasons, but remember at the beginning of the season, he was taunting everybody, if you don't like our schedule, come play it. Well, Kirby, that kind of bit you in the ass, because when we're looking at strength of schedule, we're looking at everything, that didn't do you any favors. They were easily played one of the softest schedules out of the top 5 besides Florida State, but they're undefeated, so that's kind of out of the question. But I mean, overall, it's never been just the 4 best teams. That's never been what the college football playoff has been about. Like you said, it's been a combination of things. It's written in their criterion. Conference championships are weighted, record, like opponents, strength of schedule. Like, it's all factored in, and then the eye test where they can come in like they did with Florida State and say, "Ugh, did you watch kind of how they looked without Jordan Travis? I don't know if they'd match up very well against Michigan." And the committee came out and said, well, we just didn't think they'd have a chance at winning a game in the college football playoff. A lot of it has kind of, I feel like people are pointing to TCU getting destroyed by Georgia last year and be like, well, that's why Florida State's not in. Well, we forget that TCU had an incredible game against Michigan in the semi. They didn't think that was going to be the case for Florida State this year.
Well, in the other side of the TCU thing that I'm not checking the internet, so because I don't really care what these people are saying, but TCU was controversial to get into the playoff last year anyways. Like, and nobody cares now. because it's been a year. That's what I'm trying to say. It's going to be a year, and everyone's going to be like, man, that was crazy when that happened. And that's it. And that's the end of it. And the College Football Playoff Committee knows it. And so be as upset with you want as you want, but if you didn't see this coming, you know nothing about college football. They just killed the West Coast, brother. Like
I know.
they don't give a shit about anything but the bottom line. And to be honest with you, people are saying, like you can't go based on imaginary games. You can't look at the betting lines. It's got to play in a little bit. Like you have to eye test some of these things and think to yourself matchup wise, because Florida State might have matched up maybe better with Washington than anybody else in the playoff, but that's not like you weren't going to bump them up to 3 just to fit them into the college football playoff. That's not how this works.
Yeah, and I got to say, man, looking at these matchups, and here's the other thing too. This is going to be a great day of football. Michigan, Bama, physical, two teams who want to return to status. Obviously, Bama was knocked off the peg after Georgia overtook them, and Michigan, who wants to get back to the top of the podium and to the top of the pedestal. And then you've got Washington and Texas, high flying offenses, fun quarterbacks. Teams who. Washington won a championship in the past. It's been a while for Texas. Like we've been saying, are they back? Are they back? It looks like they finally are. These are great matchups. I can't wait for this.
It's potentially the best one that there's been. And I know that we probably say that at the end of every year, but this really feels like for the first time we have two genuine toss-ups. And you can try to bury Washington at your own peril. I think there was a lot of people, 9.5 you couldn't get short enough for that line for Oregon, and they got bodied, and it came down to a field goal and all that stuff. Washington showed up and physically was like, okay, we're playing ball today, and if that's the team that shows up against Texas, that's going to be fantastic. And we're looking at, if Quinn Ewers balls out twice and Texas wins the national championship, this dude's coming out of school.
You think so?
Yeah, if they get crushed, I mean, if he goes out and wins a college football playoff and looks fantastic doing it, it's going to be hard to sit there and argue that these NFL teams would rather have Jaden Daniels or they'd rather have Michael Penix or they'd rather have Bo Nix because Ewers has all the tools and he's going to have age on those guys, which we know is vital. And then on the flip side, I mean, this is little old Bama. Just hasn't won anything in 3 years versus a team in Michigan that, we've been doing this back and forth with them, and this one feels real. Like they might, take this thing home in a dominant way to the point where there's no denying that Michigan is all the way back. But if they lose again after the sign stealing and with all the discontent there between like the athletic department and Jim Harbaugh and really Jim Harbaugh and the NCAA, that it's going to be a more fun offseason story for us anyway. I don't know why people are upset. This is must-watch TV, both of the games, whereas before you might have been able to turn on the NBA at halftime.
Well, I'm pumped, dude. Like you laid it out perfectly there. So for the Michigan side, Tyson, so let's kind of get into the little early look here, or early look ahead, and we'll get into a full breakdown when it comes up. We got to know injuries. We got to know. I don't think there's going to be any opt-outs. Like that would be crazy to me, but early look ahead. So you laid it out pretty well here. So the Michigan thing does feel real. They have an incredible offensive line and a really good defense. For some reason, their offense has not looked quite as good as it has in years past, which is different from, the first two iterations of the college football playoff Michigan teams. Like JJ McCarthy, like it feels like he can make big plays. Like he showed that against Ohio State, but for some reason, the stats have not been there, like the big counting stats and all that. Donovan Edwards, their backup running back to Corum, and even Corum themselves, like, yes, Corum's getting in the end zone. They look like they're running in cement shoes. So I have major concerns about their offense. Defensively, what have we seen when they get into these games in this competition? They get smoked. And so I'm wondering if they got enough speed on that side of the football to compete with Bama, who all of a sudden, man, they look like they're on like one of those moving sidewalks. Like they are fast. They're flying around. Jalen Milroe has confidence. To me, that's going to be the biggest thing in that 1-4 matchup.
I mean, this might be the most predictable college football season. It feels like we had no upsets all year. Nobody truly separated themselves from the field all year, and Nick Saban just found his way in there, man.
Oh my God!
It's now you're giving him a month to prepare for an offense that, and I understand you're a Big Ten guy, and so maybe this will hurt a little bit. This is a team that like chose not to pass the ball in the second half of one of their biggest games of the year. This is a team that hasn't exploded on offense against a good defense really all year long, and now you have a red hot Alabama team with the best college football coach of all time analyzing that tape. The speed is different. Like Alabama is just faster, and I truly think, I'll say it right now. Michigan is DEAD, man. This is dead. This is out. I think Alabama. I like right now. I'm taking them to win the college football playoff. Like this is. It just feels so. I feel so dumb for not seeing this before the season. With the way like we were talking about them and just kept saying this feels like an old school Alabama football team, and I don't know if that's going to work now. And of course it did. Of course.
Of course. Yeah, it just feels like one of those teams from Bama for sure. And I think they could beat Michigan. I placed a very large wager on them +3. I got that number, got insane CLV on that. Like as soon as it came out, I was texting you, Tyson. I was like, dude, I have my thumb on FanDuel just waiting. And as soon as it came out, it's blast. +3 money line. Don't even care. It's already down. It's nuked. That's in our chalkboard though, that Tyson will tell you about at the end. So you could have gotten involved in that. But let's talk about Washington, Texas on an early look ahead before we get out of here. And if we do any closing shots, to me, I think it's going to come down to, can Washington block the interior defensive line of Texas? Because they have mauled every single team that they've faced, and that includes Alabama. I mean, we were looking at Alabama's offensive line after that game like, oh, what the hell is wrong with them? Maybe it wasn't that, because they've taken care of business, and they really quieted Georgia. Maybe it's just how good this Texas defensive line is. Is Michael Penix Jr. going to be able to have time to throw? Because against Oregon, he had all the time in the world, found his guys. I don't think that's going to be the case against Texas. And on the other side, I'm just waiting for the classic Quinn Ewers and Sarkisian game to show up in something that matters most, and them to make mistakes, and them to be tight, and then to not be ready. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't happen this year and they finally figured it out, but it feels like this could be the spot for them.
I mean, DeBoer might be the best college football coach that doesn't get the respect on the level that he probably deserves. All this dude's done since he showed up at UW is win, and they're going into a college football playoff after they beat a team that everyone in the world was like they had no shot in a rematch against this Oregon team. Now they're going in as underdogs again. I think that's a very scary place to be if you're Texas, because this Washington team has answered the call every single time they've been asked. It hasn't looked pretty a lot of the year, especially the back half, and I think we got some – maybe clouded our judgment a little bit of this Washington team. I think Saturday or Friday night against Oregon showed me, that team is still in there. Texas is going to get after Michael Penix. Washington was doing some really cool misdirection stuff to end the season here for the last 6 weeks that they hadn't really put on tape through the first 8 weeks of the season or whatever it was. And I also think that there's more opportunity for quick hitters here for Washington, because I think Texas is going to come out and want to give some cushion. And then, if we're just going athlete for athlete, give me my guys if I'm Washington, and that might apply to everybody in the country. LSU's wide receiver core is awesome. Ohio State's is awesome. I don't know if they have this combination of dudes that they have over in Washington. It's going to be fun. If they can run the football, they can play with any of these three teams. We all talked about how the Pac-12 might have had just its best season of all time. Is it the same? And we're talking about a Big 12 Texas. That doesn't even are they physical enough to play with Texas? That doesn't sound correct coming out of my mouth, but that's a story. Washington was able to run the ball early against Oregon, and we saw it was like, oh, they're going to be able to do whatever they want for the rest of the night if this keeps up. And that's going to apply if they can do it against Texas. It'll apply if they can do it against Michigan. It'll apply if they can do it against Alabama. They just haven't played anybody like that all year.
Yep, I completely agree with you. I can't wait for these games. I'm pumped, man. I am super pumped for these ones. These games can't come soon enough. But Tyson, man, we got bowl season, and next week we're going to be going through. We're going to be previewing the first slate of games that are coming out. So don't worry, we got you covered there. We got it. Don't worry, baby. But anything we want to close on, any last closing shots you want in our college football playoff reaction show?
I think the biggest travesty of the weekend was the committee not giving us LSU versus Iowa in a bowl.
Yeah, that's that we were texting. We were kind of formulating, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? What that's going to look like? And you texted me all devastated, and I can't lie, man. My heart sank as well. I wanted to see that matchup.
Jaden Daniels wouldn't have played, and it would have been Nussmeier throwing 5 picks, but it would have been a fun build-up. And that's, I mean, who cares? LSU versus Wisconsin, the beer sales will be good.
Okay. Chalkboard time. Tyson will tell you about it. The reason why we're plugging it hard right now is opt-outs, 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 transfers. That's going to change the lines. So we may be on something early, and before we come out with the show, we're like, well, we got this number. That's why we want you to be in the chalkboard so we don't look like pricks. We're saying we got a better number, and you guys are like, well, we can't get that now. Got to be in our chalkboard. That's what we're saying here. So Tyson, where can they find that?
The App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. The group name is ISWIS, presents the Roundtable Bets. Just type that in. We'll let you write in. It's free. And this is a pretty important time of year because, dude, how many good quarterbacks just today entered the portal? Or like Cam Ward found a home? That was fast. That was, then you got some tampering going on. We can't bet on that in the chalkboard, but everything else will be in there. And, stick around. Tell us what you're picking on Sunday as well.
In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. Smash that like button on the way out if you're watching on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or even where you get your other podcasts, wherever that may be. Follow us on socials, X, Instagram, and TikTok at ISWIS_pod. You can stay connected with us there. We'll be back previewing the NFL, man. It does not stop. It just keeps chugging along in the NFL. That's going to be later this week. Again, make sure to tune in next week for our bowl preview. That's one of our favorite times of the year. Like Tyson and I, we love talking about these games. We love betting these games. It's a lot of information-based stuff. So
Brad's bet on every Group of 5 team in America. He has you covered for this bowl week.
I hope so. They owe me for a lot of what happened this season. But we're excited for it. That'll be back next week. But tune in to the NFL, our NFL one later this week if you want to know what we're playing on Sunday. Again, we hope you have a great time watching these bowl games. We'll be back with you next week. Until then, peace.